I'm going to read from a Jesuit oath that all Jesuits have to believe in their hearts. I, in the presence of Almighty God, and of you, my ghostly father, the Superior General of the Society of Jesus, founded by Saint Ignatius de Loyola, do by the womb of the Virgin, the matrix of God, and the rod of Jesus Christ, declare and swear that His Holiness the Pope is Christ's vice-regent and is the true and only head of the capital of the Catholic or Universal Church throughout the earth. Therefore, to the uttermost of my power, I shall and will defend this doctrine and His Holiness's right and custom against all usurpers of the heretical or Protestant authority, and all adherents in regard that they be usurped and heretical, opposing the sacred Mother Church of Rome. I do further promise and declare, notwithstanding I am dispensed with, to assume any religion heretical for the propagating of the Mother Church's interest. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion or will of my own, which is why Jesuits are not allowed to fall in love, or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse. Those King James only Jesuits who committed suicide when we caught them, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors, like Zack Knight, in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ. I furthermore promise and declare that I will wage relentless war secretly, like the King James only Jesuits, or openly, like Zack Knight taking me, the Protestant leader, to court right now, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth. This is why Jesuits invented the nukhaki and other military weapons and are a military organization first before they are a religious organization, and that I will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics. That's why they sawed off Terence Jenkins' leg right before we nuked the Vatican. Rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, read Fox's Book of Martyrs, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate forever their execrable race. This is the Jesuit extreme oath of induction as recorded in the journals of the 62nd Congress, 3rd Session of the United States Congressional Record. And I'm going to have links to all this below this video. In an online conversation I had with Jesuit Rule 13, who is my friend, at the Jesuit portal on February 11, 2013, someone who identified themselves as Jesuit Ceciltron butted into our conversation, making these statements. Some of us are too busy persecuting Protestants, damned Protestants, and their filthy Protestant loans and their boring footwear. Let there be one church, one faith. Rule 13. When the last Protestants have been cleansed from the world, we will finally go to that little Tape's bar in Rome I keep telling you about. They make the best martinis. When I commented that Jesuits do not truly understand or appreciate the Japanese respect for deep and true love, Zack Knight added his sick humor, and tentacle rape, he added. Then Ceciltron said, that's nonsense. Our agents have been in Japan since the first Portuguese set foot there. When I commented about my movie Brent Spiner's rape to Rule 13, Zack said, I like when Brent was raped. My favorite part was when he had sex with the cat. Jesuit Laurie McBride drug-raped Brent Spiner and forced him to have sex with a cat. See my movie Brent Spiner's Rape. Brent tells me this was the worst part of the rape. If not for me, because of this rape, Brent may well have committed suicide. When we nuked the Vatican, we were following conspiracy law, which found after a rerun of the Nuremberg war crimes trials that the Jesuits were guilty on all counts we brought against them of war crimes against humanity, and therefore any willing and knowing Jesuit or Jesuit supporter deserved the death penalty for just being a Jesuit. The mere fact that they made the Gail android sentient by reverse engineering her in an attempt to use her as a military weapon against us shows that they had military intent with the Gail android and planned to use her to exterminate their enemies. If not for Jesuit interference, we would not have lost millions because of the Gail android. You know, it's impossible to have a fair trial against this military organization, the Jesuit order, using a civil trial under the current Jesuit-controlled United States legal system, like we're forced to do under this temporary military peace treaty that I have with Zack Knight, which he wrote and that we both signed to defeat the Gail android. The Jesuit 1st, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 11th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution block the principles of my conspiracy law, in which a person is judged for their motives first and their actual acts second, just like how Jesus Christ will judge us in the future for our motives. The First Amendment says that the Jesuits are free to say whatever they want and believe, and they're free to see anything they want, even defamatory stuff, and to believe anything they want. It also lets them put up any news feed they want, like Jesuit news, and they're able to assemble into Jesuit groups and even petition the government to help promote their war crimes and defamatory broadcasts and publications. The Fourth Amendment says that we can't just search suspected Jesuits or take their military technologies from them, that we have to get a judge who may not agree with us to give us permission to do any of that. The Fifth Amendment protects Jesuits from having to admit when they're lying. They can refuse to incriminate themselves, so that means no forced lie detection, which is a basic foundation of my conspiracy law, which also helps us get intelligence about their military activities. So if a Jesuit is ever found not guilty for a crime, we can't even take them to court again for it, even if new evidence comes up. This is like a repeat of the court case against Alfred Dreyfus. See the film The Life of Emile Zola at my website at gabrielchana.com/biography.html, which is a movie about an iniquitous Jesuit-run trial at my website. We can't even search them or their ships or homes when the Fourth Amendment is in play, which is why we cannot prove that Zack is currently at war with me, at secret war with me, in violation of our temporary military peace treaty, using his clever ruse of the King James-only Jesuits. In the Sixth Amendment, the jury can't be pre-selected to weed out Jesuits or Jesuit supporters. We'd basically have to randomly select people, and then both sides would have to agree on the jurors. Basically, conspiracy law was created to keep Jesuits in check, because they all deserve the death penalty because they are guilty of horrendous war crimes against humanity. So if they'll cooperate with us, we will often let them get out of the death penalty. These are the list of their war crimes. They orchestrated World War I, World War II, the U.S. Civil War, and just about all major wars in history, along with the torture of millions of innocents in concentration camps worldwide, not just limited to the Nazi regime. And then the Eighth Amendment limits how harsh we can be with the Jesuits, and it doesn't let us execute them for being Jesuits or Jesuit supporters, which means we could not execute any Nazi criminals from World War II because they were all Jesuits or Jesuit supporters. The Eighth Amendment would call most of our punishments cruel and unusual, but the Jesuits never mention cruel and unusual when they rape people and set up concentration camps. I guess that's okay. That's not cruel and unusual. But for us to execute them for doing these things is cruel and unusual. And the 11th Amendment is the worst of them all in that people are immune to court cases from laws and jurisdictions outside of the Jesuit amended U.S. Constitution, basically saying that no part of conspiracy law can be enforced in this current trial we have between me and Zack Knight. And they call this junk sovereign immunity. Jesuits are guilty of massive war crimes, rapes, murders, nukakis. The one in Canada was the first. After that, they did a whole bunch of them, probably like 50. And they're responsible for the deaths of millions and millions of innocents. And this is not just World War II. That's right now within the past couple years. If not for Jesus Christ blocking some of these Nukakis, I'm not even sure I'd be standing here talking to you. Jesus has been interfering with their attempted war crimes. They want to continue to. It is impossible to have a fair trial under the Jesuit laws called the U.S. Constitution and its Jesuit amendments that we are forced to use. We request jury nullification, which means the jury elects to drop this case because it cannot be tried justly under the Jesuit laws we are forced to use. And there's another thing which I'd like to point out, an inconsistency in Zack Knight. I hear that he's making a big deal over the fact that he claims that I nuked the Vatican just because of the nudes that were paraded around the Vatican. If I'm such a horrible person, and I'm such a petty person that I would nuke the Vatican just because of a bunch of nudes floating around, I wonder why in the world he wants to make love to me. I mean, isn't he horrified that I killed his beloved Pope? You would think he would be outraged at this and would not want to make love to the murderer of the Pope. Unless perhaps he really murdered the Pope. So that's why he doesn't care. He's saying I murdered the Pope, but he's the one who put the bomb on the Pope. We tried to transport the Pope out of there. And then it exploded and took out several of our decks when the Pope exploded. We damaged ourselves in our attempt to save the Pope. So